Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right. Thank you for tuning into the Lone Wolf Podcast. I have a special guest here again, second time on the show, Jo Sheree. And today she's going to be talking about the DD waivers in Kansas. That's developmental disabilities, I believe it is, waivers for the state of Kansas. I think they're having
intellectual and developmental disability waiver.
Jo's been kind of keeping track on this. It's kind of a more personal issue there. Really hits close home to her. She's been, a big advocate on these kind of issues. Part of that stuff is where she had her falling out in a lot of ways with like MPP, with their failure to do anything about people with disabilities and whatnot. So, you can find Jo's social media handle on Twitter in the description box below. But, I'm sitting here, I'm doing my rambling. I'm going to turn the floor over to Jo. Tell us, Jo, what's going on in Kansas that concerns you with these DD waivers these days?
Well, I've been a big proponent of, money corrupts. And I have always been very diligent about going through current legislators and seeing where they're taking their money from and how I think it impacts their decision to create and pass legislation when it comes to people with disabilities. Our family has been impacted by this neglect of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. My son has cerebral palsy, and we got thrown into a hole and totally forgotten about. Kind of like when they throw prisoners into the solitary confinement and forget about them. That's where we're at. So I had a chance last month to go on the Hair of the Dog podcast or show, and some of the stuff that Carrie uncovered really pissed me off more, because we found out that there was a legislator who proposed $100 million to go to getting people off the wait list for home and community-based supports that have been on the IDD waiver and waiting at least 8 years to get home and community-based supports. And nobody's talked about this. I didn't know about it. And I consider myself pretty on top of things with Kansas politics because I have to be. And so I have been in contact with my legislator, my senator, actually. Her and I have been having exchanges for the last couple of weeks. And she agrees that the waiver is totally screwed up and that it needs help. And this is from a Republican. Okay. And, she's been very good about returning all of my emails and everything. She is the only legislator so far that has listened to me and has put any stock into helping me out at all. And what I find extremely shameful is that we have all of these Democrats in Kansas that have railed and beat their breasts about the GOP, how they're, trying to take health care away from Kansans and this, that, and the other. And so far, there's been total radio silence on my issue. I have not had one Democrat so far come forward and say, Jo, how can I help you with this? Not one. And I had a chance to look at all the campaign finance reports of Democrats who currently serve in the House and the Senate. And I found out that there are 16 Democratic senators and House of Representatives that are taking a total of $40,000 and some change from the insurance companies that are in charge of the state privatized Medicaid system now. They're all taking money at some level from Centene from United, from Amerigroup, from Aetna, from Sunflower, and there's another one I can't think of right now, but it's like the parent company of either United or Aetna. And I mean, some of these legislators have taken upwards of to $7,000 from these companies. And I'm like, so an insurance company can sit there and say, well, we can't afford to keep you on the waiver, but we can afford to give this legislator $7,000 in a campaign season. You know, the thought like that just totally boggles my mind. Like, if you weren't shelling out $40,000 to legislators, maybe you could help people like me and my family and others like me, because there are over 4,000 Kansans with intellectual and developmental disabilities that are on a wait list, waiting 8+ years for home and community-based supports.
Right.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
And we got kicked off about 3 years ago because we had a really bad experience with care attendants, and we needed a break. Instead of Amerigroup, who was in the privatized Medicaid system at the time, helping us find somebody who was reliable and stable, they kicked us off. After the case person that they sent out came to the house and said, well, we can help you find somebody, they still kicked us off. And not one legislator, Democratic legislator at that time, offered to help us try to get back on the waiver. Not one. And I'm like, well, why are you even Democrats? I thought Democrats were supposed to be the party of the little guy like me and you know? And I mean, I'm just, I don't know. It's like they almost want to lose in this state or something. I don't know. And the people that will sit there and say, well, yeah, but it costs money to run a campaign. And I'm like, really? I ran a campaign last year, bringing in less than $1,000, and carried 2 of the red counties in our Senate district race in my primary, and got 1,300 votes in the more predominantly blue Shawnee County. So how did I need all this money to run? I got out and I talked to people. Yes, it was during the pandemic. It was at the pretty much at the onset of the pandemic when it hit here in Kansas. But, you know, I got out there and I beat the pavement. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I got my walk lists. I asked people to help me go canvass. I was going out into the rural areas. I was, you know, asking people to take a look at my platform and everything. So how does it take all this money to run a campaign? Where does the money go that you're supposed to be raising anyway, you know? So I'm just really fed up. I'm pissed off, and I don't want answers. Why is it that this legislator, Mr. Representative Donahoe, proposed $100 million come out of the general education fund to go towards eliminating the wait list people, and nobody talked about it. You know, this $100 million, and I have screenshots of the budget analysis where the governor did not recommend close to $14 million go towards the reduction of the IDD waiver wait list, on top of denying money go towards IDD employment services. And I'm like, what is up with you? Why are you doing this? I mean, you're supposed to be a Democratic governor that's supposed to be for the people. But what you have an ableist sense of privilege by thinking that only Kansans that are able-bodied should be able to benefit from all of your policies. And so I don't know. I'm at a loss. I really am. I have no idea. And I know that people are going to get pissy with me in my party here in Kansas for me continuing to speak out, especially legislators who, want to get elected again next year, because again, next year's an election year. Well, every time I bring this up to the legislators in question, well, it's always an election year. Well, if it's always an election year, maybe you need to actually bring this up during an election and address it.
Right.
Instead of ignoring it, because it's not getting better.
No. And as you talked about, you don't know if the Democrats are just wanting to lose. I don't know necessarily that they want to lose, but what they really care about is the money. As you point out, you got all these, local politicians in your state who are taking the money from the insurance companies. And it's just handbook 101 for corrupt politics in today's society, unfortunately. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who have been cast aside and were, ignored by the mainstream media. They don't talk about things of this nature. And it's people who have, whether it be, developmental disabilities, mental disabilities, physical disabilities. You don't hear very many people really talking about that group at all. And you can relate that in a lot of ways to a lot of just the regular, everyday, middle-class Americans that feel that they got cast aside. And the thing that you hear the most about, not to say this doesn't have its place in society and in the debate, but the biggest thing that you hear about in today's world is all this racial divide, racial tension. They've made everything about like a black, white, brown type thing. It's all about race, 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 race. They beat that drum to death. Okay. As they say, stop beating the dead horse already. Okay. That has its place in society's argument, but there are other groups of people out there who have plights of their own. You don't hear anything brought up about it. The politicians don't run on it. And the reason that the politicians don't seem to want to focus on, and this has been my takeaway, the reason that they pick these issues, the reason they pick the identity politics in most cases to focus on so much is because that's what mainstream media has turned into the hot topic of the day. It's a funny thing. The mainstream media controls what society talks about in a great deal. They control what people, you turn on the news to get informed. So when I turn on CNN and this is what CNN is talking about, that's what they've then planted into my head. There's a stand-up comedian, Eddie Griffin. Some things he said I don't agree with, but one thing he pointed out about TV, I think it's a very good point people need to take away from this. It's called television programming. They're telling your vision what the program is. They're literally programming you. Okay, it's television programming. They program the people with propaganda. So when they do nothing but shove racial stuff down your throat all day long, that tends to be what people are then focused on. And the way they do it, they don't just talk about the issue, but then they bring on these commentators who say this, say that. They put a certain tone in their voice. They carry such emotion in the way they're speaking. They are deliberately trying to pull at emotions in people to piss you off. They're not just trying to inform you. They're trying to make you scared, pissed, or whatever. But they're trying to draw some emotion out of you so that you take what they just told you and you feel some type of way about it. And when you do, that then becomes the focal point, whether it be it's your focal point that you don't like what they said or you completely agree with it. Now I got to go do something about it. It's that type of thing. So the politicians then see this is what's going on. They're trying to keep their ear, to the ground to hear what's going on. What's all the commotion about? And unfortunately, these groups, the people with the disabilities, the people who lost their pensions, the people who lost their jobs, that's not as much of a hot topic. There is a group out there, the people who lost their jobs and whatnot. There are those groups still out there. And ironically enough, here's the thing. When you have the right candidate come along who talks about them, they seem to do pretty well, especially if they get out there, as you said, and beat the doors down. I mean, why? I referenced this, I believe, in our last video, and I referenced this a lot. And this is not saying that Donald Trump was a great candidate or a great president. But when he ran in 2016, he had a good strategy, which was talking about the job loss, the bad trade deals, the things you stopped hearing the politicians talking about. And the Democrat Party used to be, part of the group who was supposed to be standing up for the little guy. And, you point that out, that's supposed to be the party of the little guy. But, again, in the corrupt world where bribery basically became legal in today's society, they both got bought off a very long time ago. So, tell us in particular, for those who might not know, what exactly do these waivers really do, and why is it that important for a lot of people? Why do they exist? What are their purpose, and why is that, what does it really help? Just for anyone who might not know.
Well, the home and community-based supports waiver for people with IDD, what that allows is for somebody to come into the home and help a caregiver with either respite services or caregiving services. And in our case, we were going to be able to get respite care, and we were also going to be able to get attendant care services for when he was out of school and on the weekends. What that also enabled us to have is if I needed to get Anthony to the emergency room, I could have somebody come to the emergency room and sit with us so I could go to the restroom or help me with him if he got too weak and we couldn't dress him or get him undressed or anything like that. Somebody to go to doctor's appointments with us. Somebody to help him with his ADLs when I can't be there.
Right.
Right now I can't work because I don't have anybody to help me with Anthony. If he got sick while I was at work, I don't have anybody that can come home or, come to the house and help get him to the hospital.
Right.
And so, and people are like, well, what if you're only working just a few hours a day? Can't he take care of himself? And I'm like, no, not if he gets sick. What am I going to do if he gets sick?
Right.
And so there's a lot of families that have a situation that is way more severe than us. Anthony's moderately functioning as far as person with cerebral palsy is concerned. But there are a lot of people that have cases where the loved one that they're taking care of at home is in a lot worse shape and needs a lot more care.
Right.
And it's exhausting to try to live your life, take care of your loved one, and, try to keep the bills afloat. And we're on a fixed income. We survive on Anthony's SSI and food stamps. We're on Section 8. We get Medicaid through the state, and that's it.
Right.
That's all we survive on month to month.
Now, and I want to point this out just real quick there, because what you just laid out for the viewers here is that this is something for someone who has this sort of disability. This is something that they really need. You know what I mean? And what you laid out, you have a choice at this point. I don't get the help for someone to come and watch my son. So I can't leave him here by myself or by himself. So I have to stay here and be able to care for him as opposed to going to work. But if I go to work and something happens with my son, I can't be there. God knows what could happen while I'm gone. We've been talking about the Democrats. Let's focus on Republicans for a second. There's a hot topic out there. This is something you hear Republicans preaching from a podium about every election cycle. How important it is, how much we should preserve life. In particular, they like to focus on that whole abortion thing. You know what I mean? And people can have their opinion on that. You know, I personally don't like to see an abortion happen, but it's a personal choice type of thing. You know what I mean? But the Republicans, they beat that door down. No, we have to preserve life. So understanding this, we have to preserve life before it's born. But after it's born, well, we got you into this world. Figure out what you got to do now. You know, and for someone who is able-bodied, that whole argument of you control yourself, the libertarian type argument, you know, that you own yourself. So how successful you want to be in this world or whatever depends on how much work you're willing to put in. Some are going to argue that, but the overall point is, I would say there's at least some level of truth to that. There, you know, you might not be the next Bill Gates per se, just because you work hard. But you can, if you're willing to work hard enough, at least provide for yourself, at least, you know what I mean? And if you choose to just sit around and not do anything, you're probably not going to have very much. So there is some truth to that. But what happens when your personal situation, because you have a loved one at home, does not allow you to have to go do that 9 to 5? You can't do that. You can't leave them. And the government has given you no assistance to help care for that loved one. At that point, you're in a gray area that they don't talk about really on the left or the right. So that's a pretty big thing for the Republicans is, you know, if the Republicans really feel that strongly about preserving the right to life, then if you're born into this world and you have hurdles in front of you that require you to have that care and help, we should be preserving that life, should we not, Joe?
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, I wanted to make that point for the audience there real quick, that this is something that is it's necessary, you know, and if you're not going to give the money to provide that help for a person to come and wait or whatever, then you've got to understand you can't hold that their mother or their sister. Because, for example, I had a great uncle. And he wasn't born with a disability, but when he was, I think he was 12 years old, and he's passed on now. But when he was 12, he was stung by a lot of bees as a kid, and it gave him a type of like a mental disability. I'm not really sure how or what it was. I never heard like a medical diagnosis, but he could function for the most part. And, you know, he was able to get up. He could care for himself in a lot of ways, but his mental capacity, it's almost like he never fully grew out of being a child in some ways. And so my aunt helped care for him. She helped him handle his money and things like that. She would make sure he took his medicine properly, things of that nature. And then that was his sister. So she lived with him and cared for him for the rest of his life. And whether it be mother, sister, you know, whatever, you know, you've got to have that help to survive. You got to have it. There's really not much of a choice there. You right. Don't have, you know, all the things that me or you or somebody else, you can't just toss them out there in the world and say, go fend for yourself. They don't have the capabilities. They need that help. That is critical for them to have. So if you care about protecting life to be brought into this world, start giving a little bit of a shit about it once it's in this world.
Amen.
That's just the point that I had to make. But go ahead. Please continue with what you were saying. Though.
So Okay, I kind of forgot where I was at there for a second. Okay. And back to your point with the Republicans is they demonize people like us.
Right.
Because, oh my God, I'm asking for government help because I can't go do this, but I'm in a catch-22. So, I can't work and I can't earn money at home from the government so that I can pull myself up out of a little bit of poverty. So what am I supposed to do? What are families like mine supposed to do? And I just want to shake my head.
Yeah.
And we've got this thing that here in Kansas where, because I'm considered a natural support, I can't get paid for taking care of my son who is an adult now. So I stay on Section 8. Anthony still gets his SSI. We stay on food stamps, and we still stay on state Medicaid.
Yeah. And probably wake up every day wondering with how the politicians are operating, what are we going to do if they ever screw us and take that away from us?
Yeah. And they're already have means tested food assistance to death. They've already means tested medical assistance almost to death. And Section 8, you're means tested very, very closely. You earn one more penny than what you're supposed to, and your rent can either go up or down.
Right.
So, I just, every day, you're right. I do. I wonder, well, what are they going to take away from our family now? Because there's not much more they can take away from us.
Yeah. And let's break that down for a second too, for all the Republicans out there who want to be concerned about costs for this and costs for that. What I just mentioned and what you just said you do every day, you wake up worried. You know what the middle class tends to have as they grow older in age? They develop a lot of health issues. You know why they develop those kind of health issues? Number one, you're living on a budget, which means you can only eat what you can afford. So we'll just start with diet. Okay. A lot of people tend to eat either fast food or potentially ramen noodles. Down in the South, I don't know about you, Joe, but when I was a little kid growing up, I had Spam sandwich. Okay. Spam, canned Spam. Now, look, a lot of people say, oh, God, Spam. Hey, I grew up eating Spam and bologna. Okay. You can say what you want about it, whether it's healthy, you think it's disgusting, but you know what? When you live on a budget, you got to survive. You eat what you can afford. Well, when you look at what the stuff is made out of, some people even say it tastes good, fried Spam, bologna, whatever, but it's not healthy to eat all the time. Now,
Right.
and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be the standard bearer of eating healthy. I'm not. But I also reckon that when you eat because you're living within your means, what you consume in your body, it takes a toll on your health. So that already puts you into one camp that as you put more of this into your body, in order to survive, it's going to take a toll on your health. You'll be more likely to probably be diabetic. You'll be more likely to have high blood pressure. But you're living your life stressed to the max for a lot of reasons. If you're working the 9 to 5, you're busting your ass in today's world. And in a lot of cases, just probably barely making enough money to really get by. Now you take me and my wife. We both work the 40 plus hour a week. A lot of weeks, we're putting in around 50 hours, sometimes more. Okay. I'm working all over the upstate area with my job. I travel around. I've been flipping from third shifts, second shifts, first shifts, 12 hours, weekends, weekdays. It's all over the place. You can't get sleep adjusted, and now to be fair, I took that promotion, but why did I take it? Because it was more money and I needed more money for my household. So you're putting yourself through all this extra stress because you need money to try to survive. And here's the beautiful part about this. And it's not even my job because my job doesn't offer good health insurance. Luckily, my wife has got a good enough job now. They offer decent health insurance. For the first time in a few years, I'm actually going to be able to have some health insurance. And I haven't had that in years. But even still, you know, they say the average American lives where they couldn't afford, what is it, like a $400 emergency. If we had that right now, we've got a little bit in a savings account to barely squeak by. But it wouldn't leave us with very much left. If I had multiple, I'd be screwed. And that's the way everyone else is. So even when you're working that hard just to kind of get by, you're really not left with very much left over to really put aside for those rainy days, for those problems. And one critical thing a lot of people need to get back and forth to work, a vehicle.
Yep.
They're making cars today, costs more and more to work on. So if your car breaks down, you don't have that kind of money laying around. Now you're screwed. And if you lose your car, you lose your way to work. I mean, it's terrible. So this sort of stress affects the everyday American. It affects your health. It really hurts your health. And it will put you in bad positions where you will have all sorts of medical conditions, or at least be more likely to have them as you grow older. Between diet and stress, you will grow old before your time, as some have said in my neck of the woods. It just happens. And so one thing that I want to make, some of the people who I've had little debates with here and there online, the people who lean more toward like socials, and I've mentioned people who try to game the welfare system, and they immediately clutch their pearls like, no one games. I know people who game. Okay. And when I'm referring to that, what I'm talking about in particular are people, and I've got a few in my family, they don't have those sort of disabilities. There's nothing stopping that person from trying to work. They made a choice. They didn't want to do it. And they made a choice. I'm going to look for however many avenues I can to slide in that back door on the welfare system to try to support my lifestyle without having to go to work. So, for example, came straight out of high school, popped out about 4 kids, and they want to go out all the time. Still today, party with their friends, just dump the kids off on grandma. I'll go do my thing, and I'm not working. Here's what I have to say to that. Some people argue, well, the greedy system we live in, I don't feel bad if they're trying to get their share from the welfare system. But understand this. If you're doing that, they're already making that list hard to get on as it is. You got to find these ways in. If you don't absolutely have to have it and you take it anyway, then understand this. You could very well be taking it away from a person just like your son who needs these benefits. It's life or death. It's not life or death for someone like my second cousin to not want to get off her butt and get a job because she made a choice. Why work if they'll pay me? Okay. That's not justifiable. And as much as the politicians are to blame for not taking care of who they should be taking care of, there should absolutely be more funding into the IDD waivers, as you pointed out. There's also more funding for institutions and stuff for people. If you're not able to care for them at home, to have a home where they can be taken care of, and for the few that are out there, there should be enough funding that they could be ran properly, because some of these places are pretty abysmal.
They are.
I mean, it's absolutely pitiful. And so a lot of people don't want to send their loved one to a place like that because they're like, look what they're going to be living in. Yeah,
I know. I've worked in nursing homes. I know there are some really crappy ones out there.
It's bad. And waiting lists. You got nursing homes, of course, for the elderly. And then I had this is on my dad's side of the family. He was like a step uncle, I guess. He was my grandmother's second husband's son. Okay. And he had a mental disorder, and he was put into like a community type home, right? It wasn't like a complete nursing home, but like there's a staff and they work there, and there's so many rooms in the houses, and they each have a room, and they kind of socialize. They take them out places and things like that, and they live there, and there's someone there all the time to kind of watch over them. And it's like 3 or 4 people, and they live in that house. The waiting list to get something like that, it takes forever. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And so we need more money for sure in programs like that. And so for the people who want to just sit around and deliberately keep collecting unemployment because, well, that 9 to 5 kicks my ass and I just don't want to do it, ask yourself, if you really care about helping society, especially for the people who believe that socialism is a better path and that everyone should have or make sacrifices, if you believe in this ideology truly, then look at that and ask yourself, do I really need this? Because if I don't, there's somebody else out there who could be using that funding. And then we need to pressure the politicians, once society does the right thing, to start taking some of that money away from pile A to put it into pile B where it's truly needed.
Yep.
And even the Republicans, if the money's already there, some are probably going to argue cut the budget, but we've already been sustaining the budget. Any good businessman would tell you, if you got the money laying around and you need it for this, put it into that. Put it into that. The money's already there. So if you can work things like that out, that is society coming together and thinking about the good of a community, the good of other people. And for the people, you know, whether they be on the left or the right, whether they be capitalist or socialist or communist or whatever, okay, whatever you are, if you want to preach about doing better by society, start by working on yourself. If you're able to help, get out there and help. If you're on a system that you can get out of and go back to work and allow that money to be there for someone else, even though it might be inconvenient for you, do that, because that money being able to get to someone else could very well be life or death. And if the argument's going to be, well, why shouldn't we all just be able to enjoy it? I mean, come on. We don't even really need to go into that. If everyone just sat around and collected government benefits, who's going to pay any kind of tax to support any of these programs?
Right.
So, I mean, at that point, you're just going to have total collapse. So, you know, those programs are there for the people who absolutely need them. They have no other choice. That is what they were intended to be there for, from everything I've ever understood. When you are down on your luck or you've been handed a bad hand in life and you've got no other choice, this is what we can do for you to make sure you can sustain everyday life and survive. And right now, more and more people who are actually in that predicament are finding it harder and harder to get that help. And as you point out, the Republicans demonizing. Why do they demonize? Because they point toward the people I was just speaking of, the people who don't have a loved one they need to care for at home, but just don't want to go to work either. And now you could argue these people don't make up a majority or this or that, but they exist. And the Republicans and the right point to them. They use that. It's propaganda. You know, it's the same way that, you know, if you want to make the case, it's no different than how after 9/11, people tried to smear all, you know, Muslims and Arabs as being Al-Qaeda. Now, we know that's not true, but the people who wanted to try to make you think it was, were able to use that, okay? They've done that with multiple different things. For example, the people who've tried to come after Black Lives Matter, they take the footage, they get the clips of the worst people in the protests who are looting the town and tearing everything apart, and they say, see, that's what this really is. It's a tool to warp how you view who we're talking about. And so by using what the right would call the moochers, they're then lumping everyone who draws the help under that one umbrella. So for the people who need it, if you are just taking advantage of the system because it's time the system got its comeuppance, understand you're playing into the hands of the right who don't want to give that help, and you're only hurting the people who really need that help. People need to take a step back and really consider that, because you're playing with the game of the capitalist society and getting back at the man. You could be causing someone else to either really live in a bad way or possibly lose their life or have more health issues because they're not getting the help they need.
Yep, exactly. It's you know, society especially America, we have either people that are really good people, or we have people that are really shitty people. And I've tried really, really hard to be a good person and to live my life in a way that my grandmother would be proud of, because she's who I look to. She's no longer living. She died she died in 2001. She died about a month and a half after 9/11. So, that's always kind of a dark time for me, but I always try to live my life in a way that if she's looking down on me, I know hopefully she's made it to whatever heaven that she thinks that her God has created for. But I hope that her spirit looks down and says, hey, you're doing good,
Yeah.
And because she was a good woman, she sacrificed her life to raise her grandchildren, because my mom ditched us, and my mom ditched us when I was 6, and again, there was a point in time where I didn't know it, but we were doing the free lunch programs, and all of us kids were getting survivors benefits from our dad. And at that point in time, we were still on different assistance things,
right?
But I didn't know that until much later. And the system has never done my family any favors, and it just hasn't. And it's still screwing my family to this day, just a different generation.
Yeah.
And I got, going back to the campaign finance things, I sat down, and I don't have that with me right now. I have it at actually on a tablet, actual notebook. I sat out and handwrit all of these amounts that these politicians were taking, how much a pop and which insurance company they were taking them from. And that exercise took about 2 days. And, for me, this isn't a game. This isn't something that I sit here and I think, oh my God, how can I kill time today?
Yeah.
Who can I hurt today? No, it's not about trying to, because I'm bored and I need something to do. I'm trying to figure out what the end game is here. Why are you doing this? Why, they keep pounding the expand Medicaid drum, but they don't understand is the system we have now is screwed up and it's broken, and you need to fix what's broken before you can expand it.
Yeah.
They're like, well, why can't we do both? Why can't we expand it and fix it at the same time? It's like, no, because it's still broken.
Well, and that's waste when you think about it too. If the system was working properly, it may not necessarily even need to be as expanded as much. Now, maybe it does, but take education being another one. I've talked about education a lot, and I think that the education system is an abysmal wreck right now, and that's how I see it. That being said, their answer is pump more money into it. More money. Now, more money might help certain areas, but as a whole, there is a structural problem with the education system that doesn't even necessarily need more money. For example, by the time you get to high school, at least where I'm from, you've already, for last part of middle school, early years of high school, as a freshman and a sophomore, you're getting all this stuff about you need to pick a career. Okay. If we're not going to do it in high school, and I think we should, because at least by the time you graduate high school, they have all these trade schools now. They had one with my high school, Dorman High School. They had one, R.D. Anderson. You could go, you could learn these vocations and whatnot, right? But if we're not going to even institute it at high school, at least by the time you get to college, there's no sense in the world for you to be taking a lot of classes that are going to do you no good. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of money, especially when you're going to college and having to pay to go to college, or even if you're getting grants or, this tuition money or whatever. It's money being spent on something you don't need. So if the idea, when you already have a system that's forcing all this stuff to be done that the student might not even need, is to pump more money into it, you've got a broken system. So I'm going to ask you, Joe. I mean, I don't, from what I've gathered, I don't think you're a car mechanic, but I think even you are going to know this about a car. If you had a car and the engine blew a head gasket and warped the valves and it wouldn't run properly, are you going to fix that engine by just pouring more oil in it?
No.
That's not how it works. That's just not how it works. You can pour oil in until it's running all the way out of the valve covers. It's draining all over the crankcase. You've just got an oily mess. And then guess what? You've got a broken engine that's just overfilled with oil and it's still doing no good. That's going to be the same way for the education system. That could be the same way for the Medicaid or the Medicare system. If we had the proper leadership that was cutting out all that extra fat and bureaucracy that ties everything up, like the VA. VA is another good example. There's so much corporate bureaucracy from the government and red tape, this and that ties everything up. It's money already being wasted. And so if you fix that problem, you might be surprised how much money's already in that budget you could free back up to expand it with what you're already paying.
Yeah.
But no one's really focusing on that sort of thing. I mean, it's just, no, dump more money into it. And then the Democrats call for dumping more money into it. And the Republicans say, no, well, where are you going to get the money? But there's no one in the room except for the people like me and you who are talking about, wait a minute, there might be money already there. You just got to fix it. If you fix those valves and fix that head gasket, you would need to add more oil necessarily to that engine. The problem would be fixed. It'd be fine. You just drain what oil was already in it out, put it back in when your engine's rebuilt, and you're good to go.
Yep.
No one wants to talk about it that way. It's just, it's a way, Joe, I say this. I've said this about our pharmaceutical industry with medicine. There's no profit to be made in cure.
No, there isn't.
There's profit to be made in treatment. Same thing in politics. If I fix the problem, what do I have to run on next cycle? There's profit to be made in politics to bitch about the problem.
Yep.
Keep complaining about it. This is what we got to do. But the other side's stopping me from doing it, so I couldn't get anything done. But next election, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to go on TV. I'm going to go on Facebook. I'm going to stand on a debate stage. And I'm going to tell you what we need to do again to fix the problem. And then you're going to go out there. I'm going to plead and beg for your vote. You come out, you vote for me. I win office. And then for the next 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, depending on which office it is, those damn Democrats or those damn Republicans, they just stonewalled everything I want to do. I couldn't get it done. The system still broke. So you got to come out and vote for me again. Einstein said it is the definition of insanity to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results.
Yep.
That no one is talking about how the system that we're arguing about is just broke and it's got to be fixed. And if you hear them mention that, if you hear those words come out of their mouth, the solution usually tends to be that more money type thing. And if the Republicans talk about it, then their solution is just cut the damn budget and change nothing.
Yeah. There's no happy medium, and one of the emails that I had with my senator today was when I was laying out to her what all needs to be fixed with the waiver program. She was floored. She's like, wow, that is a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed. And I told her, I do appreciate you listening to me and responding to me when I email you. I said, because I do feel like I'm shouting into a void on this stuff a lot of times. And I said, and I still haven't heard from any of the legislators that I emailed about the money and the can care issue and everything else. So I'm hoping maybe after this and after, the interview I did with Carrie and Andy, that maybe people are going to start seeing that, I'm starting to build up an audience with the leftist YouTubers,
Right.
And maybe they should start listening to what's going on. I don't know. I'm just at this point just trying to go on and just talk to anybody that's going to listen to me and help me feel validated and see that, or at least make me feel like I'm not alone and that I'm not shouting into this void. And that's why I was really appreciative of you when you said that you'd take the story and let me talk about it on your show, because I like your style. You and I come from similar backgrounds of, we don't hold anything back and we're very straightforward and to the point. And I like that. And I like that I can come on here and I don't have to hold anything back.
Right.
And I want answers. I want to know why you're taking this money from these insurance companies when you're sitting there bitching about Republicans taking money and this, that, and everything else. And you're not helping people that come to you and ask you for help. And you're supposed to be the person for the little guy.
Right.
For people like me. What is it? Why are you not doing this? Why are you not helping us? And, the Can Care Oversight Committee that we have here, it's not created to help people like me.
No.
That was plainly evident the second time that I went to a Can Care Oversight Committee meeting to testify. It's to protect the insurance companies and their profit margin so that they have more money to throw at the politicians.
Right.
If the politicians are helping them realize savings, then that might be more money that the politicians can have to fund their campaigns.
Yeah.
That's the only explanation I have. Okay. That's the only thing that makes sense is as to why they do not want to remove United, Sunflower, and Aetna from the Medicaid privatization here in Kansas, because they're all profiting from them. So why take out something that's working for your campaign?
Right.
That's the only option, the only thing I could think of,
Well, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, it comes down to, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. They pay the politicians to put the wheels in motion to help them out. When those wheels are in motion, it starts helping them out. They get more money. Now we pay you a little bit more. And then the next time we see something coming our way that we want you to, as the lawmaker, as the legislator, to step in and take care of for us or run interference on, we're paying you all this money. You do it. I will say this, when I was a kid, my mother watched this 70s, 80s, and even early 90s soap opera. You're probably going to know what I'm talking about. Dallas.
Yep.
If you want to understand politics, learn a thing or two about J.R. Ewing. And that's all I'm going to say to that, because basically what that man did for 14 seasons on the show Dallas sums up politicians. all the dirty stuff under the table, paying off cops to do this and that for him, snatch people up, bring them to him. All this stuff that you saw J.R. Ewing did is the kind of stuff that goes on behind closed doors in politics every day.
Yep.
And that pretty much just sums it up. When you go to Capitol Hill and you look at the United States Senate, you've basically got 100 J.R. Ewings. That's what you have.
Yep.
That's what you have. Now, some might be a little more like JR than others, but that's what you've got in front of you. You got a bunch of wealthy, corrupt people, and if they weren't wealthy when they got there, they're wealthy by the time they left.
Yep.
And it's something that Governor Ventura always said stood out to me. When he ran and got elected, he made more money doing the job than he spent to get it. And that's saying something when you look at when you look at politics going on in the world around. So I'm going to say something real quick, and then I'm going to give you the last word, get your final thoughts out there before we kind of close up here. But you mentioned coming on my show. What I'm about to say is a message to the other indie media. I have a few that watch my show that I interact with. So I'm going to say this, we have a lot of bigger channels who talk about, you got the Jimmy Doors and all that, and they talk about AOC, and they talk, and there's nothing wrong with talking about these topics, but I challenge some of the other channels out there who are trying to do something. Talk to people, talk about issues you don't hear so many other channels talk about all the time. You know what I mean? You've got to get out there. We're indie media. And I'm not advocating for the next CNN or Fox News contract. I don't want that. I don't want to be in that world. And what I want is to talk to the people, who have struggles out there and help get that message out there. And that's why I've already decided, as part of what I'm going to start doing. For a long time, I came on here and I talked about issues, but I ran my mouth a lot. I'm going to start bringing more people on. We need to start talking to other people. If we're going to get any kind of unity thing going in the first place, you got to have these conversations. You got to talk to people. Bring people on, talk about this issue. And, for the people on the left, a good friend, another good show, Frank Analysis. And he talks about like the Medicare for all thing and what. Something else that I think needs to be added into that conversation about getting health care for everyone are taking care of the people who have disabilities that don't get the help they need.
Yep.
It's something that you just don't hear that much about. And we should, because all these other issues are mostly in a lot of ways affecting the people like me or Franco or you or Jimmy Dore, all these other guys. Okay. We are able-bodied adults, but no one is really talking about the people that are not able to get out there and go to that protest to advocate for his issues or her issues, because they could be homebound. They could be ridden to a bed or in a wheelchair and can't really, travel very well. Someone needs to be standing up and speaking out for those people.
Yep.
We need to have a voice in the room. We need to bring that up to the table. We need to have the conversation to advocate for their needs as well, because in a lot of places, they are not able to get out there and beat those doors down and advocate for themselves a lot of times. Some of us are going to have to start being, in a lot of ways, to use a quote, the voice of the voiceless. And so that's why I was more than welcome to bring you back on the show to talk about these issues. We need to have these kinds of conversations. And I challenge all the other indie media channels out there. Don't just duplicate what you see from bigger channels all the time because they got a bunch of views complaining about all these fake progressives. there's a conversation to be had. If you want to make that video, make that video. And if you've got the time to do it, and you've got the time to make multiple videos, you know, and you've got the time to put the editing in and all that, you make a video talking about that, because naturally you want to grow your channel. So if it's click type stuff, it gets the views in, it gets you the exposure, go at it. But make sure you do videos talking about the stuff you don't hear in every day. And I even not only challenge a lot of my counterparts, but even people as big as like Jimmy Dore. Start focusing on stuff like this, you know, the Kyle Kalinskis, you know, all these people. And if you want to go on the right, you know, even the people like the Hodge twins, the conservative twins, you know, Steven Crowder, think what you want about all these people, but they need to be talking about issues that affect the everyday American, and especially people who have disabilities. You just don't hear that subject nearly enough. And you'd be surprised how many people out there are in those shoes that you're having to live your life in right now, Joe, but you don't hear about them.
Right.
They're kind of swept off to the side. You know, you just don't hear about that struggle at all. It's not hot in the news, so people don't talk about it.
It's not sexy.
Right. And it doesn't sell. It's not the kind of thing they make a Hollywood movie about. It's not the kind of thing they want to make a song about. You know, all that racial tension stuff, they make money off that. People don't realize when they keep that stuff hot, that it's such a cultural problem in the United States. They keep it hot in your mind because they can then make a movie about it later on, and then everybody's going to go watch it. You know, Joe, it would not surprise me. I'm going to just say this, and I'm taking nothing away from what happened with the George Floyd scenario, but I would not be the slightest bit surprised if at some point within the next 5 to 10 years, there's not multiple documentaries made about George Floyd, maybe even a movie. Wouldn't surprise me. Now, some might say, well, it's getting the message out there. Okay, maybe, but I guarantee someone's going to make a lot of money off of that too, right? How much money of that, I wonder, are they going to give to the George Floyd family, you think? You think they're going to turn all the proceeds back over? Someone's going to make money off of that. That's why they keep it hot. That's why they keep that out there in the media. But no one wants to talk about the people who have the disabilities, because as soon as you bring that topic up, it invokes different reactions in people, if you know what I mean. They see someone who has, you know, a disability of some sort, physical, whatever, and it targets nervous emotions. They don't know how to interact sometimes. You know, I'm sure exactly what I'm talking about. I saw. Oh yeah, family members.
I do.
They don't know how to approach handling them, talking to them. It invokes a lot of different emotions. It's not, as you put it, it's not sexy. It doesn't sell. And so no one ever wants to talk about it, but it needs to be talked about because these people need that help. So that's my challenge to a lot of the other shows out there. We need to talk about a lot more of these blue collar everyday issues and mention things like this. These people need our help. They need our voice, because if we're not going to do it, who is? I'm going to give you the last word, turn it back over to you. Give us your final thoughts and we'll close up here.
I appreciate you again for letting me come on your show. And, you know, I'm not trying to be a bad guy in this. I want to make that perfectly clear. I am not trying to be a bad guy. I just want answers. I want services for our family restored. I want some help. I want to be able to go out and get a job. I want to go out and get a degree in social media marketing or a marketing degree, because that's what I excel at. Right. I can't do any of this until I can get some help with my son. Right. And I'm not trying to be a leech on society. You know, I have a lot of positions that I hold within the Democratic Party right now. And I was actually offered another position within the Democratic Party framework that I'm probably going to take. I was offered to head up my own committee for disability issues with the National Federation of Democratic Women. And so I'm probably going to take that position. I'm not taking these positions because I'm bored or I need something to do. I'm taking these positions because people like my son need a voice. And if I am helping other people in the process, I'm very grateful for that. But the thing that really makes me upset is I feel like a lot of people, especially in my state, well, it's Joe. It's Joe. She's doing this. She's doing that. I feel like a lot of times they're being dismissive of what I do or what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make things work for people that need it to work for them. That's it. And I'm sorry no, I'm not sorry that I'm calling people out. I'm not sorry that I'm calling people out on this. When you're taking money from the insurance companies that you're charged with overseeing, who are you actually representing? Are you representing them or your constituents? When you're able to live off of their campaign donations, because don't tell me you're not passing legislation to help your constituents anymore. You're looking out for the bottom line of the insurance company so you can continue to get money for your campaigns. And you can sit there and say, well, state legislators in Kansas only get $88 a day. But how many dinners do you get at the convenience of the lobbyists? How many little cocktail hours do you benefit from after hours? How many fundraisers do you get to go to in these ne'er-do-well houses and get to eat all of this wonderful food and stuff,
Right.
And then some of these people, they have full-time jobs. So being a state legislator is their second gig, and they have a wife at home or a husband at home that can help take care of the kids. Mm-hmm. So when you get into the legislator, it's like all of a sudden all these doors open for you, and then do you forget about people like me when you get in? On some level you do, because all of a sudden, hey, I'm able to go eat lobster tail with this person. I'm able to go have a wine dinner or a wine tasting like Pete Buttigieg did when he was on the campaign trail. All of these things. And I'm not bemoaning being able to go do these things. What I am bemoaning is don't forget the people that actually got you into office, and that's really it. I'm just not trying to be a bad person. I'm just trying to get answers, and I feel like I'm owed some answers.
Absolutely.
I'm just not doing this stuff for my health.
Yeah, I'll say this. I said you're going to have the last word, and I'm just going to add real quick. No, if anyone thinks with you advocating for this that you're being the bad person, they need to put their head on straight. Every American every day's got to do what they think is best to support their family and to survive. And so you're doing what's best for you. You're doing what's best for your son. And that doesn't make you a bad person. If anyone thinks it does, that makes them a bad person because you're trying to care for yourself and your loved ones. So, just saying that, I want to thank you again for coming on today, Joe. Help get the message out there to all those other YouTube channels. If you're watching this, contact Joe, okay? Her Twitter handle is in the description box below if you want to bring her on, talk to her, help get her stuff out there, bring her on your show, help get that message around. Or at least just talk about the issue. If you want to dig into it, do some stuff like that. But that's my challenge to all of you. If you like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up, drop your comments in the comment box below, share this video around. Let's help it get out there. You can find this video on YouTube, Daily Motion, Rumble, and Odyssey. We will see you next time right here on the Lone Wolf Podcast.